likely have heard that President Biden called Xi Jinping a dictator during a press conference after his 4-hour meeting with the Chinese leader. And my feeling is good, because he is a dictator. I mean, Xi Jinping has centralized considerable power in his own hands, which is a hallmark of dictatorial governance. Xi Jinping holds the three most powerful positions in China: the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the Chairman of the Central Military Commission, and the President of the People's Republic of China. This trifecta of roles concentrates all the power in his hands, more so than any of his predecessors. In 2016, Xi was declared the core of the Communist Party, which is a significant title that places him at the center of the party's leadership. This designation has historically been reserved for leaders with high levels of authority, such as Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. In 2018, the Chinese Communist Party removed the presidential term limits from their constitution, which effectively allows Xi to remain in power indefinitely. This move is seen as a significant departure from the precedent set by his predecessors, who served for a maximum of 2 terms. Xi has established various chairs in several small leading groups and central committees that oversee various aspects of governance, including economic reform, national security, the internet, etc. These groups centralize decision-making and power into Xi's hand and reduce influence from outside of the Chinese Communist Party, and more specifically outside of Xi's own decision-making. As the head of the Central Military Commission, Xi has exerted strong control over the military. He has overseen a significant reorganization of the People's Liberation Army, emphasizing loyalty to the party and himself. In fact, Chinese soldiers have specific curriculum that talks about being loyal to the Chinese Communist Party, as well as being loyal to Xi Jinping himself. Not just being loyal to China, but being loyal to the party and Xi Jinping as its leader. There have been anti-corruption campaigns that were launched to purge rivals and those deemed disloyal to him within his party. High-ranking officials, including members of the Politburo, have been targeted, which has helped Xi remove potential threats to his authority. Xi has placed a strong emphasis on the Marxist-Leninist ideology and reinforced the Chinese Communist Party's control over the total ideological discourse. There cannot be any dissenting views in China, and any that are quickly squashed, and those that have perpetrated those ideas are arrested. And this includes a renewed emphasis on party discipline within the CCP and loyalty, as I've talked about. And they call it the promotion of Xi Jinping thought as a key part of the Chinese Communist Party ideology. Xi has played a significant role in shaping China's economic policy. He's centralized economic decision-making within his own office, reinforced the role of state-owned enterprises, stolen the intellectual property of any enterprises that aren't state-owned for state use, which further strengthens his party's grip on the economy. Under Xi, there has been a notable crackdown on human rights activists and lawyers, particularly those involved in the 709 crackdown of 2015. During this event, numerous lawyers and activists were detained, interrogated, and in some cases tortured. This action sent a message to others that might want to challenge government policies, and it has only gotten stronger since then. The treatment of ethnic minorities, which is probably the most egregious thing taking place in China, and probably the most widely condemned around the world, especially the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. Evidence has shown that mass detentions in so-called re-education camps are taking place. These are where detainees are subjected to political indoctrination, forced labor, torture, and abuse. There are also allegations of forced sterilization and destruction of Uyghur cultural and religious sites. These actions have been labeled as genocide and crimes against humanity by various governments and human rights organizations. Furthermore, the imposition of the national security law in Hong Kong in 2020 marked a significant erosion of freedoms promised under the one country, two systems framework. The law has led to the arrest of pro-democracy advocates, politicians, journalists. There's been crackdowns on protests and a significant reduction in the freedoms of speech, press, assembly, and this is seen as a severe violation of the rights of Hong Kong citizens. The Chinese have gone so far as essentially installing a puppet government in Hong Kong that reports to Xi Jinping himself. The Chinese government continues its strict control over Tibet, suppressing religious freedom, cultural rights, and political dissent in that region. This includes the surveillance and control of Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, restrictions on the use of Tibetan language in education, and repression of any kind of Tibetan nationalism to speak of. The Chinese government under Xi Jinping has tightened control over social media and traditional media as well, which is an absolute hallmark of a dictator. There is heavy censorship of online content, with topics deemed sensitive by the government being quickly removed. It's the so-called Great Firewall of China, which has been strengthened to block access to foreign websites, monitor internet use within China, and kind of tamp down anything that makes China look bad. And the response to COVID-19 is a prime example. China was implemented strict measures and tight controls of information that could, quote, paint China in a bad light, which led to a slower global response and millions of people dead due to COVID-19. My most viral TikTok video, it reached something like 5 million views, was of Chinese drones monitoring the movements of people and spreading announcements for mass forced testing and mass lockdown messaging in China. The Chinese government has deployed extensive surveillance measures to monitor its citizens. Authorities in China monitor phone calls, messages, emails, you name it, they monitor it. This includes the use of sophisticated technology to scan and flag keywords that are deemed problematic or sensitive. Perhaps the most extreme example is once again in Xinjiang, where the Chinese government has established a pervasive surveillance system to monitor the Uyghur population. This includes the use of facial recognition technology, the use of checkpoints, the use of a network of cameras to closely track the movements and activities of individuals in China. And this has expanded to all urban areas within China. The systems have even been moved to North Korea and Russia for them to use as well. Then there's the social credit system, which is a government initiative to develop a national reputation system. It assigns ratings to individuals and businesses based on their social behavior, which can include financial creditworthiness, adherence to traffic rules, social media behavior, even their religious beliefs, the television they watch, the internet sites they visit. It's incredibly invasive. And the system influences access to services and opportunities based on these ratings. I've shared videos of people not being able to get fuel for their vehicles because they don't have enough social credits to access that particular fueling station. There have been increased restrictions on academic freedom, with scholars facing pressure to align their research with the CCP government policies. Topics sensitive to the party, such as the history of the Cultural Revolution or the Tiananmen Square protests, are heavily censored and completely removed in academic discourse. In fact, overseas academic discourse through the Confucius Institutes that take place all over the world also suppress Tiananmen Square protests and Cultural Revolution discussions, and with threats of removing funding from universities that carry these. This has caused such a problem that many universities have ejected these Confucius Institutes from their grounds. There's been instances where critics of the government, including prominent businessmen, journalists, and public figures, have faced intimidation, disappearance, and detention without any kind of clear charges. Even in China, they recognize these problems. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, reported that the number of Chinese nationals seeking asylum overseas increased tenfold since Xi took office. While around 12,000 sought asylum in 2012, that number rose to nearly 120,000 by 2021. In total, approximately 730,000 Chinese nationals have sought asylum since 2012, with more than 170,000 living outside of China under refugee status. And this despite China supposedly increasing its standard of living. So given all of that, given all of what I just said, how was Biden supposed to answer that question? Because Xi Jinping is a dictator, period. To say he is not would have been a flat out lie, which Biden would have and should have been vilified for. He would have faced major backlash. At what point in this country, the U.S., did we become so spineless that it is faux pas to call a spade a spade? When did we stop recognizing that our values are superior to the values of an authoritarian dictator? And that's everywhere, not just in China. And we weren't afraid to say it. Biden's meeting with Xi Jinping, making deals, etc., does not absolve Xi Jinping from the title he rightfully earned as a dictator. And I'm happy Biden said that Xi is a dictator, because he is. No amount of friendly summits will change that. Only the Chinese system can change that, and it's currently unable to. That is not to say we can't work with dictatorships such as China, because we have and can, but we have to be honest with the realities of the world we are living in and not use flowery language to skirt the elephants in the room.